Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan. Together we make movies with DBS Films. Today's episode, we're going into how quantity will make quality as a filmmaker. This is the part 2 of it, and this is honestly a very fitting episode as it is our 100th podcast in the process that we've been making since we started last year, going into these tips and tricks. In this episode, we really wanted to dive into how making more things will always end up making you better and how you should really frame that and what actionable items have come out from us making 13 movies in the DBS Films production process. As always, be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online because we make movies for our fans with our fans. So if you wanted the chance to be on set behind the scenes with us, all you have to do is join that channel. So really in the first episode of this, we kind of talked about how, the overall view of what you get the major benefit from actually finishing things, how most filmmakers actually don't really have many reps when it comes to actually making movies, and how there's a lot of things that you just don't even know until you go through that process. Really in this episode, I kind of wanted to just double down on that, but really get into more tactical items with it. I think the first place to really start off is, we finished our 13th feature, the Roger Files, and just through the entire process, every single time we make a movie, you end up having things that work and things that don't work. And when you start, you're completely, at zero. You don't know what works and what doesn't work. But I really feel like for DBS Films, it's kind of just been avoiding what does not work and then embracing what does work to the point where now every part of the production process, we have this wealth, this tribal knowledge of just what the process will look like. I mean, even screenwriting now for us is much different because we're able to basically pick the types of scenes and the beats and the scares that we know are really good. So instead of just kind of, going out there with no waypoint, because of the experience we have, we almost have this perfect guide set up for us in the sense of making a DBS film. And on top of that, now we can just focus on improving them. So would you say that's kind of your overall thoughts and how the production process gets easier every single time you make a movie?
Yeah, it's always been our philosophy to always pull back scares and reuse things that we know work. And then we try and test out new things. But it's taken us 13 movies to get to this point, and I'm writing our 14th movie, which is the Bigfoot Project. And this might be the first movie where every single scare, everything that we've done in this movie, we've done before. And so that took us 13 movies to get there. Obviously, that is a lot of scares. It's a lot of intense scenes. But this will be the first one where I feel comfortable with everything because we've done it before. Now I'm hoping it's going to be better because the second time you do something, you're usually better than the first time. So I'm excited to go all the way through this process. I think it'll be a smoother shoot. I think the beats and the pacing in the story will be better. But once again, we're pulling from experiences that we did before. With the Roger project, we used a lot of scares that we've used before, a lot of beats that we've used before, but I still think a lot of that movie was still newfound territory for us. And I felt comfortable risking a little bit more because it was such a small production and everybody's local. Everyone's within an hour and a half away from home base. So if there was any kind of issues or pickups, we can go back and do that. But I think for the next one, it'll be the first time in DBS history where we're going to be pulling pretty much from everything we've done from before. And I'm interested to see the quality of this next movie because I think it's going to be very good because once again, the second time doing something, you're just much better at it. But once again, it just comes back to you. We've done 13 of these movies. You probably have to do 10 to at least get to this point. But, I'm excited for it. And it's going to be a good proof of concept for our entire philosophy to see how smooth and how good this movie performs.
It really is. And honestly, it's not even just in that filmmaking process of like the actual tangibles. Cause I think most people see, writing, filming, and then editing are kind of the big three. We have experience in each one of those. So, the biggest experience you're going to get is learning not to screw yourself in editing because of how painful that can be. So we set ourselves up from the writing process. So that'll be an easy shoot, set ourselves up from the shoot. So that'll be an easy editing process. And that just streamlines the whole whole production to, move forward with it. But I think another thing that comes up is just a lot of the little details. We've talked about how pre-production is something that's really big, and honestly, we haven't leaned into that much. We've talked about little processes like Google Forms for the food, when we used to basically try and make giant group meals and things like that. And I think what ends up happening is you're almost kind of like taking a giant chunk or a block, and your first few movies are just kind of chipping away at massive chunks, hoping away you're not going to like destroy the statue. But eventually, when you understand these big chunks that we're taking out of, you can really start improving them. And I think the big thing is like, it's not so much redoing the one, but also improving upon it. That's kind of the big thing that you get too. And I think what ends up happening is when you're a first time filmmaker and you just don't know, almost kind of like ignorance is bliss. I think it's almost funny. We like refer to as like children of summer when we were first making those movies. But if you asked us, the very first time going into those shoots, each one of them, we were ready to go. We thought we had a great movie. I mean, I even remember in the editing process, I was always like, oh, this is the best one yet. Look at this, we have this. And I continue to say that, but it's those fractional gains. And I think at first, when it's 1 to 2, 0 to 1's the biggest one, then 1 to 2, and so on. But as we get up to the level that we're at now, it's more or less refining our palette of what we have. So, would you say as a filmmaker, really the first few movies are just kind of just breathing and getting them done, getting them uploaded? Whereas now I would say we don't necessarily have that big fear of it not being uploaded, which frees us up to then go ahead and improve the small things, take those risks here or there in those scenes, understand what does work and what doesn't work. Whereas as a beginner filmmaker, you're just trying to survive and get something uploaded.
Yeah, but it goes back to our philosophy of you have to upload something. The movie is not completed until it's uploaded. And the reason for that is because you'll actually get people to watch this movie and give you feedback. If you've been working on a movie, most independent filmmakers will be working on a movie for about 3 years. They'll have a concept that they'll stir around for about a year. It'll take them a year to write it, and then it'll take them a year to shoot it and edit it. When you're that far invested in this movie, it can be very difficult for you to take a step back and kind of grade this movie and rate this movie without your bias being into it. And there's a lot of movies where I think our movies are very, very good, and the audience feedback says something completely different. Some of my favorite movies of the first 13 are the ones that are the lowest rated. And that's just a person's opinion. That's just opinion stuff. Now, yes, there is fundamental and technical issues wrong with these movies that we can fix, but for the most part, people have different opinions. They like different things. But you have to get that feedback because that's how you get better. I read and like interact with a whole bunch of Discord members as far as like feedback. We do a giant Google sheet that gets feedback on specific things. And I try and take what people like and put it back in the movies, and stuff that people don't like, we just don't do it again. But that's filmmaking, and that's how you get better. You're still making movies for audiences. And if you have, like, you sit here and say, I'm making this movie for myself, this is my movie, and that's great, man. More power to you, but you're not going to get your money back, and you're not going to create a business on this. You can't just create a product or a business for yourself. It doesn't work like that. And unfortunately, in filmmaking, a lot of filmmakers have that idea. They're like, this is my art that I'm going to put out to the world. And unfortunately, the world just does not want that piece of art. So there's going to be no marketplace for your art. And I think I'm making movies. We make movies for our fans, with our fans. But the whole thing is we make it for our fans. We're making movies that people will enjoy, that you can turn on and relax and step out of reality for an hour and 20 minutes and watch some people get their heads chopped off. That is what we do. That is our business model. But we have to get feedback. And in order to get feedback, you have to upload it. And I just think a lot of movies get lost in the void. They never get uploaded. And the reason is that because the pain point is too high for them. They don't want to put themselves out there. And unfortunately, that's just not going to be a good model for success. It's not going to get you better as a filmmaker. So I really would encourage you to, no matter what your project is, give it the best effort you possibly can, upload it, get that feedback, and then quickly start your next project.
Honestly, having another project in the works is one of the best things to do to get you over that hump of basically uploading it. I think the next thing I really want to talk about is kind of the confidence element of it, in the sense that, you just get confident. And this goes back to what we were talking about in the first episode, where you don't really know something until you've done it. So first off, you're confident in the sense that, well, I've done this before, so I understand this, or I've worked with this before. But one of the biggest things that we always kind of point back to is, well, at least it's not Morgan Estate. And, Morgan Estate, again, was more ambitious of a movie. There's just a lot of different issues with it. It required a lot of different pickups. It required a lot of different editing. The team on it, again, was absolutely fantastic. It's just a testament to the difficulties of the filmmaking process. But we always kind of have that in your back pocket. And I think, as you start off as a filmmaker, you simply just don't have the experience and that confidence that you get from it, where, as now, knock on wood, Bigfoot could be a complete, 180 from this. But our movie productions have been getting easier and easier. And I think the reason for it is because we're more confident in what works. We're more confident in our execution. Even if I just look at from the Murder House to now, I would say you're a little bit more timid as a DP in the sense of making sure you had all of the coverage as you possibly could, to where now you're confident and it's like, nope, we got it. That's the take we're going to use. There's all these little factors that go into place. And it's really hard to even explain what that confidence is like on set or going into a project, because again, if you asked us at movie 2, guess what? We were confident at movie 2 too. So it's this scaling confidence that you didn't even know wasn't really there until you go through that process. So do you have anything to say on just that overall mindset that it gives you of being able to adapt, being flexible, but knowing deep down inside, hey, we've already done this before. Things are going to happen, and we know that we're going to be able to, take those challenges. And if you have that mindset, I find that usually things go a lot more right than wrong.
Yeah, and that mindset comes from editing and solving problems in real time. It comes from editing 13 movies together. When I'm, shooting these movies, there's a few technical things that could really kind of screw you. And I'm hypersensitive, hyper aware that I'm making sure that these issues are not occurring. Same thing with sound. I've cleaned up so much sound, so much audio. We used to have horrible audio in the first 8 movies that I know when a jacket ruffles, if I could take that out or not, or if there's a truck in the distance, is it close enough, or can I just take it out and post? I know all these things, which gives me confidence on, sets, not to just do a million takes. But it also comes down to, like Kel was saying, Morgan Estate was just such a crazy movie. To even fix that movie, to scrap it together, gave me so much confidence. And honestly, Morgan Estate was a huge blessing. Devil in the Room was the same way, a huge blessing, because they've taught me at the worst state of getting our film, it won't be as bad as that. And to give you an example, in Into the Forest, the one we're editing right now, I have the whole movie cut together. I think it's really solid up until the end, but I was never concerned about the end, because I knew, hey, if I could fix Morgan Estate, I could cut this movie together. I could get this climax to work. I got a couple pickups to fill in some blanks. I spent the last 4 or 5 hours working on it. The climax, in my opinion, now I haven't watched it back, is very good right now. So I wasn't really stressed about that, because I've done the Morgan Estate. I've done Devil in the Room. I know what pieces I need to be successful. We got those pieces, and it's kind of just putting them together. Same thing with Roger Project. This movie is like a stew. All the ingredients are there. I just don't know how we're going to put it together. But I think at that point, that is kind of the fun of editing, where you're kind of having the option and letting the story breathe a little bit. A lot of our movies in the first, I'd probably say 8 to 10, really up until Into the Forest, they're very structured movies where it's like, all right, this scene happens and this scene happens. It feels like you're stacking scenes on top of each other. Where I think Into the Forest, and especially the Roger Project, are going to have this kind of cool flow to them, because I have the ability to manipulate them in post-production, which I think a lot of filmmakers do not have that opportunity. In post-production, they're fighting mistakes and they're fighting lack of footage. They're fighting just a lot of issues, which is why a lot of these movies come in at like 1:10, because they're broken. Where this one, we have the opportunity to add some stuff in there and really kind of make it flow a little bit better. And so I'm excited to edit these movies together, because I think this is going to be the next step up in filmmaking, where we're really good at writing scripts. We're really good at film or editing footage, or not editing, but doing production and getting the footage. We really haven't had the opportunity to really edit and manipulate the footage in post-production. But I think with Into the Forest and the Roger Project is the first time we really have all the options we need to really kind of manipulate and make a really good story in the post-production element of this process.
I mean, that really is the case, is you just get so much more flexibility to focus on a lot more of the creative stuff by having these opportunities and these at bats. So I think the next thing I want to pivot to is honestly one of the most important things ever when it comes to why quantity will create quality, is because if it wasn't for the number of movies that we made, and if it wasn't for the effort that we put out in marketing and understanding how to get these movies out there and our efforts of doing that, we would never have a 16,000, almost 17,000 person strong Discord, a 350,000 person strong TikTok, and our whole model of making movies for our fans with our fans. This all came about literally as soon as The Girl in Cabin 13 was released and we had finished The Haunting in the Murder House. But this was us continuing to push the efforts of marketing our movies, continuing to push our efforts of getting them out there. And I think this is one of those like side effects of quantity. The more things you put out there, the more of a following you're going to naturally build up. And, we always say, was it with timing with TikTok or whatever it might have been when we launched and we got a lot of success? It was really because we could then point to The Girl in Cabin 13, which is a huge step up from the Hateful Eight. So, if we had those other movies and we did start a TikTok, would it be slower? It's really hard to say, but it's really one of those things where the more at bats you give yourself, the more you can build a community and a brand for yourself. And we talk about this all the time. So really, one of the sub consequences of us creating so many movies is the fact now that we have this revolutionary model of working for our fans with our fans. And if it wasn't for us making multiple movies, this might have never came about. If we only had one or two movies, we missed the release, we didn't really push them too much, we weren't focused on that. Whereas now, and this again, when it goes from 0 to 16,000, that doesn't happen overnight. That happens from consistency of quantity as well. That happens from me doing multiple lives, from posting multiple times, from engaging our community, from doing things. So the snowball effects applies for all elements there. But again, this never would have happened if we weren't making as many movies as we are now. So, what are kind of your thoughts on basically, again, that ripple effect that happens from just producing content? You get noticed.
Yeah, I just don't think that if we had started the TikTok and the social media stuff with the first 8 movies, I don't think people would have resonated and watched our stuff. I love the first 8 movies. They're very indie, but they're just too indie. Girl in Cabin 13 was the first movie where, yes, it's low budget. Yes, it has its issues, but it can compete with other indie movies. It did very well on Tubi. I think the first 8, unless you're really, really an indie fan, you can overlook a lot of issues. They just can't compete. And I think people who would have watched that stuff, the best case scenario, they would have been like, oh, these are pretty decent movies. It was a good shot. But I'm not looking forward to anything else that these guys are going to produce. Where Girl in Cabin 13 was good enough where we can start to cultivate fans. We can start to cultivate people who like our stuff. And when it starts with Girl in Cabin 13, when it starts with Murder House, then they can kind of go back and watch the Hateful Eight, knowing like we have a baseline quality, which is Girl in Cabin 13 and Murder House. Then you go back and enjoy the other 8 and be like, hey, look how far you guys have come. But I don't think that if we started with the first 8, in the first 8 or 3 to 4 years of effort, we would be where we are now. So I think it just goes back to, you have to have a lot of movies. But the huge benefit of having a lot of movies is you're getting paid multiple times. If somebody watches Forest of Death, which is coming out soon, and they like it, or they kind of like our idea or concept, they go back and they watch Murder House. They go back and they watch Girl in Cabin 13. If they really like our stuff, they go back and watch the first Hateful Eight. Each one of those, depending on where they watch them, can be $2 that we make. It could be 30, 40 cents if it's ad-based stuff. All that stuff adds up. So instead of having one movie which falls off a cliff after 30 days and you don't get any revenue from it, We now have 13 movies that people can go back and watch, and we can get paid that way. So not only are you cultivating an audience with more movies, but you're also padding your paycheck and you're getting the residual income. And the back catalog income is the lifeblood of any movie because it's stable. It's not up and down. When you release a movie, Forest of Death, for example, I have no idea how well this is going to do. It could be really, really good and make a lot of money and be super popular, or it could be a huge flop. I mean, we had Morgan Estate, which is a very popular movie, made a lot of money. The next one we did, Devil in the Room, made no money. And that's just how she goes. But the fact that we have residual income, the fact that we can have some back catalog cash coming in now, allows me to make better decisions because I know that income is guaranteed, that it doesn't spike. Yes, it kind of goes down constantly. There's never a spike in income. It always constantly goes down, but it allows me to, forecast out a little bit easier than say, I have no idea what's going to happen in Force Death. Like it's impossible to predict. Fingers crossed that this one does really well. But if you were to ask me, what the high and low range of the income would be, I have no idea. It'd be extremely wide.
So, I really do think one of the other big elements that we get from having, multiple productions is not only are we learning as filmmakers, but we're also getting to basically work with different talent and different crew. I think you'll see one thing with us is we typically like to bring people back that are beneficial to the set. And, if you look at basically from like Murder House on, for the last few movies that we've filmed, which is going to be 3 more movies now, we've had a solid crew of people who have been on set before. We're building up a team, we're building up people, we're casting more from our Discord, which is usually get them off to like a really good head start with that. But I think another thing that you get from Quantity is you get to assemble a good team. And what we mentioned before, all of our teams have been absolutely fantastic, but you understand, hey, this person might be better for this, or this more person might be good here. And I think honestly, Ben's a perfect example of that. Came on for a side character as Roger in the Shapeshifter and in the Force of Death, and now he is in the Roger Files as basically the lead there. So you get to have the flexibility of seeing what works and then leaning into it. Do you want to talk about kind of the benefit of working with a team and staff there when it comes to being familiar with that? Even if it's the same people over again, having multiple reps. For instance, I look at Dylan, we basically all speak the same language now when we're on set.
Yeah, and it's also they get better as well. I mean, just seeing I always bring up Howard, his acting from when we first started to, where he is now has gone up exponentially each time he steps on set. He gets better. Same thing with Reggie. And he's been in a lot of our movies. Each time he's getting better and better. He's getting more comfortable. Brent does an excellent job whenever he comes on, but you can really see they're getting better as well. So it's everybody kind of, we're cultivating this environment of getting better together. And that's a huge asset because as an indie studio, we don't have the luxury of bringing A-listers. We're working with the talent that's local. And I think the biggest problem for most actors is they just don't have enough reps behind the camera to feel comfortable. And being comfortable is the easiest way to get a realistic performance. And I think that is what you need. And if you can kind of find a team that you work together with and kind of utilize them as much as possible, I think everyone will get better. There's a reason why directors work with the same crew and the same actors and the same DP over and over and over again, because of what Kel said, they are speaking the same language. And even Dylan, with our production, each production gets smoother and smoother because we find the mistakes that we make and then we get better at them. We remove those mistakes. But I also think working with a lot of people, especially new people, and learning how to communicate with them and speak their language and make them feel comfortable and bring them on set is a huge, huge thing for us. And I think we're very good at bringing on new actors, new talent, and making them feel comfortable. And from all the horror stories I've heard from other productions, it seems like this is a huge problem in the filmmaking industry, bringing on new people and making them feel comfortable and relaxed and have a good time on set. But I think we've gotten really good at that. And I think the reason we've gotten really good at that is because we've brought on a lot of people. We consistently make new movies. We cast maybe 70% of the people that we've worked with before, and we try and bring on 30 to 40% new talent because we always want to work with that. But after you work with enough actors, you kind of realize they all speak the same language. They all have their own little quirks that you need to kind of address. And once you kind of figure out their style, it's just easier to work with them. But that took 13 movies to get to this point.
It's exactly that. And, really, as you scale and grow, everyone benefits from the quantity of it. Everyone benefits from having multiple reps, and you just see it in the production. And, I think the Roger Files was really one of the best examples of that. So I think the last thing I really want to kind of talk about, and I think this sums up everything there, the major benefit with quantity over quality, and talking this through now, is really your ability to, as we mentioned, upload, move on to the next project. I think what ends up happening with a lot of indie filmmakers is you will basically put all of your eggs in one basket, all of it with one project. You become so immobilized in the writing phase, in the development phase, in the filming, in the editing, that years of your life go by. We've seen podcasts and other things like that where people will be working on a project for 5, 6, 7 years and things like that. And with this mindset, if you follow this mindset of quantity over quality, there is constantly a force pushing us forward, and that force is there is another movie. We have to film 3 more movies this year at the minimum. We have the Bigfoot project. We have 2 in post-production right now. We have Into the Forest, which is, again, everything we learned from that movie and that concept is there in a silo. Then we improve now. We just finished the Roger Files. We're going to move on to the Bigfoot project. And really what ends up happening is, as you scale and grow, having this force to push you, it gives you the ability to just say, hey, we got to do it. We got to make this decision. We got to go. We got to get this here. We got to get it done. And I think for a lot of creatives, especially those that don't have the business background of us, there's a lot of stagnation and hesitation to it, where if you can understand that there is another project, that there is another at bat, you can really kind of detach yourself from what we see a lot in indie filmmaking, which is holding so closely to these things and not treating them as a learning lesson, which is at the end of the day, the most valuable thing you're going to get from them.
Yeah, the most beneficial thing that we have is other movies in the pipeline, because I see multiple times people will sit on a script for a year, they'll sit on post-production for 2 years, then they'll just try and continually get pickups and try and make the movie better and better and better. With a script, you have unlimited different ways you could take the movie. With post-production, there literally is an unlimited amount of ways to cut the movie. Then you can get more pickups and it could take longer. The biggest thing that I've realized, especially in the past year, is give everything the time it deserves and then move on. And for a script, that's about 6 weeks. I'll write a script for 6 weeks. At the end of the 6 weeks, I got to finalize that thing and get it shot because I want to move on to another script. When I shoot now, especially I learned from the Murder House, I got a lot of coverage because I was unsure. Didn't have a lot of confidence that I was going to get everything. And now it's like, listen, we're giving this scene 2 hours. I'm going to get as much footage as I possibly can in 2 hours, and then I'm going to move on. And the same thing with post-production. We want to get these movies done in 90 days. After 90 days, it's going to be like, hey, we've given this movie 3 months. Now it has to be done. And so at that point, we just kind of force it through because we have another project coming up. And I think that mindset helps you move forward because it's very easy to stay in the same spot. You can get paralyzed by all the decisions that you have to make. Post-production is just very difficult because you're taking 40 hours of shot footage and you have to condense it to 1 hour and 20 and constantly going through it. And you'll hear Kel tells this story all the time where I hate the whole thing up until it's finally uploaded. And I'm like, all right, that's not too bad. But that's just because when you're in something so deep, when you're so invested in something, it's very difficult to see the forest from the trees. And that can cost you a lot of time, which is why you see a lot of these movies take 3 years to get uploaded or not get uploaded at all.
That is definitely the case, and that is why we will always recommend quantity will lead to your quality indie filmmakers out there. So hopefully you guys got some good tips from this. Hopefully you will understand why it is best to give yourself as many at-bats as possible, and hopefully reframe some of your thoughts on the process. As always, be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online, because that's the place to be. We make movies for our fans, with our fans. If you join our Discord channel online, you will be able to be part of our process from now moving forward. And we're going to keep making a lot of movies because we believe in quantity leading to our quality. Till then, have a good one.